We are with the director of the archaeological part of Pompeii, Director Zurtriel. Director, how can we translate the word value in the most important archaeological context of Italy? Well, Pompeii, through its huge history of digs, which begins in 1748, helps us to understand how actually value is something which is not static. It changes through research and it changes through knowledge, and it is something which society, archaeologists, scholars and the entire community need to attribute to this monument, to a context, to an object. And in this, what is crucial is also restoration. And Cesare Brandi, the great theoretical expert of restoration, says that this is a time of recognition of value through the intervention of conservation.
Welcome to the second episode of the Restoration Week 2021, the annual event, live streaming, discussion, meetings, the Salone del Restauro in Tour exhibition aiming to promote the Italian methodologies of restoration around the world, but mostly to create a dialogue between the countries on the field of restoration. Today, we are inside the auditorium, just at the borders of the archaeological park of Pompeii, a structure dedicated to host events and convention and moments inside the archaeological park. So, first of all, thank you very much to the archaeological park to host us here today and granted the use of this structure. I am here with Mattia Bondonno, official guide, touristic guide of the archaeological park of Pompeii, and now also official touristic guide of the region Campania. Mattia, please tell us some stories, some curiosity about Pompeii.
Okay. Edones dicit, assibus hic bibitur, dopundium sidederis meliora bibes, quattus vina falerna bibes. This is a graffiti found in Pompeii and speaks about the cost of wine. So, what do you think that if we find this kind of graffiti, the most important things in Pompeii was wine. With 1 coin, you have a glass of wine. With 2 coins, you have a better glass of wine. But to have the best, you need to pay 4 coins for Falernum. Falernum is the area of Mondragone. Today there are a famous mozzarella, but we know that Martiale, the famous poet, he was crazy for this kind of wine. This is what we can find in Pompeii. Something that reminds you in your mind means that when in Pompeii was visited by the Grand Tour, they were fascinated because some history happened. And they were telling why that rich woman was with the gladiators the last day in Pompeii. Because she was in love, because she was rich, because she could be free by the slaves, but she wished not because she was in love with the gladiators. That is why it was created in Pompeii, a famous novel historian created by Edward Byron Lytton, that he wrote the famous Last Days of Pompeii. It was so successful. All Grand Tour that come to visit Pompeii, they would like to see the house with the cave canem, the house with the mosaic with the dog. And this became to be very famous because that was the house of Glauco. Glauco was the most important interpreter of this novel. He was Ione. Ione was his fiancé. Who was Arbace? Arbace was the bad, was the famous priest of Isis, goddess. We had a famous film movie in 1984, and we have a famous Italian actor, Franco Nero, that interpreted the bad. And that was why. What could the end of this novel? The slave. The slave was blind, the slave was fascinating, but the most important interpreter, Glaucus. And she made free Glaucus and Ione because she was blind, and every day she was walking in the street of Pompeii, and the last days of Pompeii were darkened. That's why she was able to walk as a normal citizen, making free Glaucus and Ione.
Thank you very much, Mattia, for this interesting story, because this is the real soul of Pompeii. Not only the archaeological or the interest for the archaeological side, but the story that have been stopped in time since 79 before Christ, when the explosion of the Vesuvium creates this magnificent archaeological area. Thank you very much for being...
also because it was the famous, I told them before, Goethe, the famous German poet, that in 1787 he visited Pompeii. He said that tragedy in AD 79 was the first tragedy to carry so much joy, because without that tragedy we have not Pompeii, we have not Herculaneum, we have not Stabia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A tragic open book on the Roman history. Thank you very much, Mattia. So today we are in the most important archaeological area in the whole world. A context that has not only an historical value, but a lot of different values. That's why today the keyword we are using and we are discussing with our delegation is value. Both in terms of the history, so the knowledge that we acquire, as Mattia was saying, about the life, the real life at the Roman times, but also an economical value, because Pompeii is the second cultural heritage per turnover per year in Italy after the Colosseum. So we are talking also about a huge economical value for the cultural tourism industry in Italy. So it is not by chance that we choose the word value today to discuss. As per the introduction of Gabriel Zurtriegel, the director of the archaeological park here in Pompeii, the hospitality values are now the key point for the structure. But of course, we are these values, these economical values can be granted only taking care of the remains, of the relics that the archaeological park is keeping safe. So, an opportunity for us today to visit an archaeological site. Usually, as tourists, we are coming here to look to curiosity, look for anecdotes, look for the story at the Roman time. We are here to look at the archaeological park as restoration experts. So we are looking at the stones, we are looking at the maintenance programs that can keep the park safe also from the human, the anthropic degradation. While visiting the park, we are in some way degrading the structure, so the technical staff of the park is working daily to keep the park safe from the environment, but also for the human beings. A three-dimensional snapshot of the Roman time that needs to be carefully controlled, restored, and keep safe. Today, of course, we are, as usually, discussing about the term value with our delegation. Again, I want to introduce our delegates to the public. We will meet them also today. New delegates joined us yesterday night from Cuba, Croatia, and Lebanon again. So we have one partner country this year, which is Albania, and 6 project countries together with us, which are Azerbaijan, Cuba, Croatia, Israel, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia. Again, I want to repeat what I told yesterday for the person who are connected only today. What does it mean, project countries? That means that they are participating with us into the Restauro Made in Italy project. So we are discussing, or we have already started cooperation project with those countries in the field of restoration to create a common language, a common bridge of dialogue between the countries, with the possibility of creating partnership to work together and save our great world cultural heritage. I want to summarize our agenda, even this year, a very important agenda. So 3 appointments of the so-called Fuori Salone, what happened outside the Salone del Restauro in Tour, which will take place in Bari from the 1st to the 3rd of September. So yesterday we were in Naples and we were discussing together about complexity. Today we are in Pompeii and we are discussing about value. As I said, on Friday the 3rd we will be in Matera and we will be discussing about ethics. 2 main events during the Salone del Restauro in Bari connected to the Restoration Week. Tomorrow we will be inside the Salone discussing about heritage and sustainability. What does it mean? How our sector can support the fight against the climate changes. So how we can be part as restoration experts to the process of being more sustainable, but at the same time, how the principles of sustainability can be applied to our sectors, because our first duty is to save the materials, the objects, the history that the objects are representing. So we need to understand exactly how to balance those 2 important topics. And we will do that tomorrow morning at the Salone del Restauro from 2:30 p.m. together with the Green Building Council Italy. The second main appointments in Bari will be from knowledge to sustainability on Thursday, the 2nd September. Just to remember you, our socials, please follow us on all our socials from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, but also follow us on our websites www.restorationweek.it and salonedelrestauro.it. Please feel free to use, but please feel obliged or feel the duty to use our chat on our website. If you are following the episode on the Restoration Week website, you will find a blog, so use it to discuss with our guests and with us about the topics, the main topics of the day. What else? Let's start now with the program of the day. Let's jump into the archaeological site of Pompeii. But before jumping into Pompeii, just let me remind you what we have talked with yesterday with the president of the Italian Trade Agency, Carlo Ferro, the meaning of the Restoration Week. The Restoration Week is a part of a bigger program supported by the ministry, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and through the Italian Trade Agency, Restauro Made in Italy, as part of the promotion of the Italian Made in Italy. Restoration, for the first time since 2019, started to be a part of the promotion of the Made in Italy, with fashion, furniture, and design. So a big opportunity for our sector. Let's go into Pompeii, into the heart of Pompeii, and let's talk with the director of the technical office of the archaeological park of Pompeii, Vincenzo Calvanese.
In the archaeological park of Pompeii, the idea of value, aside from the intrinsic value of the asset, which is a heritage of UNESCO and humanity, we mean the value that we do behind the scenes every day in order to maintain and keep the park efficient, in order to send to the next generation the full value of this park. This means daily maintenance, day-to-day, managed not only by our technicians, but also all of the companies working alongside us. We are downstream from a great event which is called the Pompeii Project, a European funding project which has somehow improved the face of the city. For the first time, we have intervened on the entire site, from the individual domus to the entire regiones, which have been made secure and restored and made come to the fruition of the public. At the end of this funding of 105 million euros, we have been able to plan even more, which are this planning is still happening today. It's 10 projects, and they are 10 sites which are crucial for the city at this point in time, and they represent phase 2 of the great project, the Chase Lovers, the Cheris home, the Diomedes home, and others like the home of Veti. These restoration interventions will return to fruition extraordinary domus, which were closed to the public, have been closed to the public for a long time, and following the intervention will give a great fruition and will be able to give back to the public great jewels.
Thank you, Vincenzo Calvanese, for introducing us into the heart of Pompeii with the eyes of the technical eyes of the restoration experts, and that's what we are talking about today here in Pompeii. Yesterday, we were discussing with Dr. Jasir Al-Arbish, CEO of the Heritage Commission, Saudi Ministry of Culture, about the importance of enhancing the offer and the quality of the cultural tourism in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is rich also in architectural and archaeological sites and artifacts. Dr. Ajab Al-Otaibi, archaeologist and Heritage Commission, Saudi Ministry of Culture. So Saudi Arabia is rich in archaeological sites, like similar to the one we are now, to be enlarged, enhanced, and re-evaluated. What is the future of Saudi Arabia in that context?
Okay, thank you, Doctor, to give us the time to talk about archaeological site in Saudi Arabia. And as you know, that subject, it's very important to put point today. And today we are in the very famous archaeological site in the Pompeii. Just I want to tell you about historical my country. Just a minute. We have a lot of archaeological sites, and you know, Arabian Peninsula, Saudi Arabia, which Saudi Arabia has 70%, have 70% in this land, and we have a lot of inscriptions, engravings, rock like old inscription, and that's good historical for us, and given us a relationship between Arabian Peninsula and another civilization nearby Saudi Arabia. Also, we have more than 42 foreign mission work in Saudi Arabia and some local mission work another site. All of them they discovered a lot of artifacts and a lot of information about Saudi Arabia historical. And we have agreements with some universities about archaeological site, as Dr. Jasser told yesterday. They have good experience about archaeological site in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. You've been talking about international partnership. Italy has a lot of experts and companies working all over the world in the archaeological field, both for the excavation, both for the restoration of archaeological artifacts.
Yes.
Many companies are still working in Arabia. How can we improve our partnership in your country?
Yes, as you say, we have two agreements, I think, with the Italian mission work in Saudi Arabia. The first one nearby Red Sea in Saudi Arabia. We do a lot of field work with them, and another mission in Al Jof near north of Saudi Arabia. And after that, today we visited Pompeii. We see good job. Because the archaeological site you have to keep. Sometimes you don't do restoration anymore. But sometimes if you have give some phenomena like strong or like that, that's I think that's okay. And because the archaeological site sometimes destroyed bad time or by weather, when we want to come back the next season or the next year, we have to put something strong. But if you can, in my opinion, if you can, you have to keep, don't change.
Thank you very much. In Pompeii, indeed, it is a very good job and in the very hard job as we are facing all over the world. So thank you very much, Doctor. Your delegation and Mr. Jazir Al-Arbish is here to discuss also with the Italian Ministry, the Italian Trade Agency, future partnership, and that's one of the reasons why we are here together talking about that. We are ready now to enter directly into the archaeological site of Pompeii, and let's start with Villa di Diomede. Let's see the video.
We are in the Villa of Diomedes, one of the biggest complexes, not just for the history of Pompeii, but important also for the European culture between 18th and 19th century, because this villa influenced a lot the artistic and literary production of the last 2 centuries. We are outside of the walls of the city to the north of the Gate of Herculaneum, and this villa, just like Villa dei Misteri, was one of the big suburban villas, a leisure villa which opened up through a series of terraces towards the sea. You have to imagine, therefore, that from this villa there was an amazing view on the Gulf of Naples and on the island of Capri. The villa was excavated between 1771 and 1774 and was one of the first villas to be left like that in the open, contrary to what was the practice before. So a first villa which can be considered a real open-air museum. It is developed on 3 levels. The first one is the one we're standing on, which gave access to Via dei Sepolcri with this beautiful garden. But the villa is also characterized by the peristyle to the lower level. A peristyle with 17 pillars on each side, and at the center a summer triclinium, so a walled triclinium where during the summer there could be dinners and banquets, all covered by a pergola. In front there was a big swimming pool. This big portico was supported by a cryptoportico, so a semi-lower ground portico, where during the excavations about 20 skeletons were found. One is considered to be the one of the owner, with still a ring on the finger, but also many women were found together with all their jewels. It was even possible to recreate the impression of a breast in the ash stuff. This feat created lots of scandal at the time and influenced a lot the literary production, so much so that Théophile Gautier dedicated to Daria Marcella, an imaginary inhabitant of this villa, a novel in 1852.
Starting to taste the beauty of the context where we are now, in which we are starting to be immersed. But let me make a jump, or a triple jump, on the other side of the ocean to Cuba, to La Habana, or better to the very center of the historical city of La Habana, the La Habana Vieja. Which is a very, very important complex of buildings in need to be restored and in need to tell their story. Lohania Cruz González, vicedirectora técnica, Unidad Básica Empresarial de Proyecto Restaura, the office dedicated to the restoration project for the Oficina del Historiador de La Habana. Loania, managing a complex heritage. We are jumping from a UNESCO site here in Pompeii to another important UNESCO site made of some of very, very important buildings. What are the actual policy for the restoration of the city center?
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for sharing with us their expertise, and I'm very, very glad to bring the example of La Habana here in Italy. It's a very young city compared to the beauties we visited in Pompeii. Well, we are now in the deep of the renovation project nowadays, and we are financing companies, we are designing companies, and we also, restorers, are working in that. We are working on buildings coming from the 16th and 18th century, and today, we are also working on other projects like museums and projects like Protection 1 and Protection 2. And along with all these projects that we are making, we have also completed the restoration of a theater. We are working on the Teatro Campador, dating back to the 18th century. We are starting this process of renovation, and we are designing our renovation action. We are also working to renovate some private buildings and houses because they are part of the historical center. And because here in our historical center, like Plaza Vieja, the ancient square, we need to restore, to intervene constantly in order to preserve these historical centers. There is a lot still to do, but we are constantly working and trying to
talking about also
finish
the
this.
social implication of the restoration in a live city. That's very important. We were discussing about that yesterday, but also probably the similitude between a place like Pompeii and the city center of La Habana are more than we can imagine or expect. The city center of La Habana is really a complex of many different buildings that needs to be reintegrated while being used. But one of the fascination of the city center of La Habana is the degradation. When you enter in many cities also in Italy, feel the degradation means feel to be inside the history, and sometimes restoration goes again this fascination, and the Italians are for sure the best in the world to deal with conservation. In La Habana Vieja, Calle de Sant'Ignacio 314, there is the first international center, Italo-Cuban Center for Restoration and Design, to enhance the cooperation between our two countries. Just a couple of words on the Ready Center.
Yes, this is a center exactly for training and renovation and design. There's a strong cooperation between these two countries, between Italy and Cuba, and with the Italian government we are working to share experience. And we are using it as an advertisement for what we do in terms of restoration and renovation. And we also held projects and presentations regarding our restoration school. And we also had conferences, and we shared the experience that we gathered in Italy as well as in the historical center of La Habana.
We will talk about the Ready Center later and again. Thank you very much. Let's come back to the Villa di Diomede and let us move into the more technical details. We have started with the history, trying to understand the role of the Villa di Diomede in the archaeological park, but let's go now into the technical details. Let's see the video.
Villa of Diomede is one of the wonderful villas outside of the walls of Pompeii, which is undergoing a restoration to improve the conditions. The villa hadn't been touched in many years, and so the goal of this project was to give it back to fruition through work of restoring the coverings, the decorations on the walls and on the floors, and the walls themselves. Before starting the restoration, the villa was in extremely deteriorated condition, and so it was necessary to understand why the villa was in such conditions. One of the main reasons, of course, is that Pompeii, as we all know, is an open-air site, and therefore it is exposed to wind and rain, and also there was the issue of collecting the rainwaters, and so the goal was to design new coverings which could channel the waters, restoring the historic canalization of the villas, and to consolidate the decorations on the walls and on the floors, mosaics and frescoes, which are numerous in the villa. And then the walls, so restoring all the walls, integrating the joints, treating the gaps, as we know, is a very important treatment, and it has been done by respecting all the restoration rules of undercutting and clear legibility, and by using materials which could be compatible with the characteristics of Pompeii.
At the same time as the interventions for restoring the frescoes, the mosaics and the paintings, we also intervened on structural aspects, mainly on a restoration which was aimed at conserving the walls, and then we also replaced all the architraves in wood, and we intervened especially on a demolition and reconstruction of a floor exactly behind my shoulders. As far as the walls are concerned, on the walls we worked mainly by consolidating the joints and all the wall aspects, and we injected in some points some consolidating agents. The mortar we used was one especially created for the Villa of Diomedes, which through sampling of color and material, we were able to reproduce the mortar of the Villa of Diomedes, both in microscopic and macroscopic aspects, and all those elements of composition were reproduced. In a chromatic and material analogy, we were able to create a mortar which was structural and without any cement used, so very, very pure lime. This mortar, which has the same kind of color, was used everywhere, especially for the consolidation of the joints and also for all the wall ridges. As far as the replacement of the architrave was concerned, as every work site, we tried to use a system which would maximize efficiency, where we could impact as little as possible the structural part in existing walls with a reduced loss, actually no loss of archaeological material. This is a patented system which allows us to compress the wall which is leaning on the architrave in order to make it solid, to linked up as though it were an architrave itself, so as to avoid any kind of breakthrough of existing wall and to avoiding any form of prop. Once the superior, the high part of the architrave is linked up, basically we disinserted this. We managed to take it out and replace it with a new chestnut architrave. As far as the floor is concerned, this will be demolished and will be reconstructed. We used a preliminary setup before taking it apart, because the wall which leans on the quadriporticos was completely compressed to avoid any rotation or any move, so it stands up on its own. The floor will be demolished and entirely rebuilt with wooden beams and rafters, therefore on waterproofed wood, and within we optimized a rod system in our project, which will be replaced with steel mail which are seated with structural mortar. This mail is then loosened at the end of the wall touching the quadriportico with the strand which are sunk within the joints, with a higher part where the peristyle will be completely sunk in this mortar and will be nailed into the floor, and everything is covered after this with earthenware as per project.
The engineer Mocha, we have started to talk about structural restoration, which is often one of the most delicate part of the restoration process. First of all, delicate because it deals with the safety, but also because it is often one of the most invasive part of the restoration process. Falla Daguerre, we met yesterday, Beirut Heritage Initiative. Welcome again. Yesterday in Naples, we have been talking about the situation, the actual situation in Beirut. Today, I would like to enter more technically into the activity you are following, and they are following in Beirut. The Surok Palace is one of the emblematic example of reinforcement force and then restoration works.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. First of all, I'd like to pay my respect to my colleague Joe Callas, who was not able to come today and who was supposed to present the Sursok Palace he is working on. And also, I would like to just say a little word about the owners of this palace. The late Lady Sursok, Yvonne Sursok Cochrane, passed away after the blast on August 4, 2020. She was 98 years old, in very good shape, but she was wounded during the blast, and she passed away very soon after that. Mrs. Lady Cochrane was actually the daughter of a Napolitan princess, Maria Serra di Cassano. So it's interesting if you see pictures of this palace. This palace actually is really emblematic of the openness of Beirut, which is the east of the Mediterranean, to the western parts of the Mediterranean, specifically, of course, Italy and the south of France. In the 19th century, end of the 19th century, when Beirut was really the hub of international economical traffic between the west and the east. The Sursok Palace is an essential building of Beirut today because it was built in 1870. It is the largest structure of this period still standing today. It not only was it in very good condition and very well preserved before the blast on August 4, 2020, but also it had a great collection of pieces of artwork, pictures, sculptures, etc. So this building was really essential, and just after the blast, the effect of the blast, because it was situated 600 meters away from the point where the explosion happened, it was extremely severely damaged. Not only in its structure, the structure was really very strongly hit, but again, as I was saying, the owner was wounded and deceased very soon after. And the pieces of art were severely damaged as well. The main structural impact on the building was that the north facade, which was facing the explosion and facing the Mediterranean Sea, was out of plumb. It was practically ready to fall. And with the support and the help of Alif, we were able to assign a structural consultant who propped the whole facade and was able to consolidate it. However, this building, which is a building of practically 3,700 square meters of areas all together, it's really a palace, it's a very huge building. This building still, a year down the road, it still needs all the rest in terms of restoration works. The owners would seem like a very wealthy family. Yes, they are wealthy in terms of property, in terms of pieces of art. However, they don't have cash to bring back this building to life. And unfortunately, the local government is also unable to help today. So the real issue here, when we're talking about Beirut, we're talking about a heritage that is still alive. It's not like Pompeii, which is, okay, ruins, very interesting, very essential to understand humanity and civilization. However, here we're talking about live heritage, built heritage, and not only built heritage, but really a building, again, emblematic of what it was, of what was Beirut in the great days at the end of the 19th century. So the building structure today is the stone walls are made out of sandstone, very tall sandstone walls, with the slabs that are a mix. Some rooms have timber slabs, timber wood slabs, and other rooms have jack arch slab made out of steel I-beams and masonry. All the ceilings are highly decorated with a plaster and colored plaster with pieces of glass also encrusted in it. All the walls are also highly decorated with frescoes. So it's really a building where we will need a lot of support, not only financial support, but also technical support. Because apart from the structure renovation, there's a huge work on the interior decoration. And without that, the building is nothing.
Thank you very much. That's the Italian roots of the lady are only one more reason among the hundreds to start a cooperation with Italy, and I'm sure that your presence here in Italy during the restoration is meaning that we will work together in Beirut. Thank you very much, and let's come back to the video mede, and with another important aspect of the restoration of the archaeological remains, the restoration of the decoration and mosaics. Let's see the video.
We are in the Calidarium of the private thermal baths of the Villa of Diomedes, where our restoration intervention concerned both the decorative elements and the mosaic floors, which are made of limestone tiles, mainly white, with some black tiles as a frame. In terms of the restoration of the decorative elements, we have treated basically the reintegration of these stuccos, which reintegrate in a neutral way, and we have reintegrated the paintings on the stuccos and on the whole area of the apse. It is very interesting to see all these graffitis which we have found and which are documented and kept, because they are real evidence of the Grand Tour. So many people used to leave a sign of their staying, and in particular, a very important signature we found on the Villa of Diomedes is the signature of Camillo Benso, Count of Cavour. In this detail, we can notice the tiles reintegration, tiles we found on site, and on the contrary, this is an old restoration work. This room has a very characteristic counter wall, which allowed the hot air to rise with these elements, which were made in a certain way, in an industrial way, and so they were placed to give the wall enough thickness for the room to be warmed up. What I'm doing right now is some touch-ups to the paintings, and that means with the watercolors I take away all the abrasions on the pictorial film, whereas on the stuccos, which are made of mortar, which is composed of inerts and lime, we do the same glazing with a lower hue as opposed to the original pictorial film. We have done a very complex restoration work in this villa because in the past there has been no particular maintenance, and therefore the decorative elements were quite deteriorated, especially the parts from bottom to top, because there was a very high level of humidity and strong temperature excursions from outside to inside, and therefore we intervened first and foremost with an initial reinforcement, and then we continued with some analysis to properly understand which were the detachments and the issues we may have encountered during the work. The The most difficult part was the cleaning side of things. We have always tried to use sustainable products for cleaning, and we did both chemical and mechanical cleaning, but mainly mechanical cleaning, because the deterioration issue with the widespread rise of water actually led to some smears which came to surface, and they had to be removed through cleaning. Now we have almost reached the conclusion of this restoration work, and therefore we are integrating the paintings and we are protecting the decorative elements.
Before changing the scenario, I want to get the opportunity to see another important mosaic restoration. We are jumping another time, this time on another corner of the Mediterranean Sea, and we are jumping to Bethlehem, the Nativity Church, where a group of Italian companies, led by Piacenti SPA, is conducted the restoration of the whole church and of the whole mosaic decoration of the church. I want to thank you personally, Gianmarco Piacenti, for granting us the use of this video, and I will try to make a comment while we will see the video. Let's see the video. I wanted just to show you how the church was before the restoration and the starting of one of the most important works that have been carried out, the recovery of the roofing. We perfectly know that once we lost the roof, we are losing the entire building. So first of all, the duty was to protect the church, reusing all the wooden structure and just repairing them in the right way and with the right workmen. We are now looking at the precious mosaics of the church, very damaged, full of lacunas, missing parts, which had to be reintegrated to give a complex union to the entire decoration. In that case, Piacenti SPA have used many different techniques for the reintegration of the mosaics with the pieces of stone found in place, or where it was not possible to find the stone in place, replace the lacunas with plasters and making a three-dimensional decoration, carved and then painting. That means from a distance we will feel the integrity of all the decoration, but from a closer distance we will see and understand the difference between the new integration and the old mosaics. So it is a very, very interesting intervention. A specific documentary have been realized by Piacenti with Sky Art. So please find it on the internet because it is very, very interesting. So let's come back again to Pompeii, but let's change the insula. We are again make a little jump from the Villa di Diomede to a closer villa, not yet open, another part of the archaeological park that will be added to the touristic offer, offers. The insula of the Castiamanti, of the lovers chased. And let's see why this particular name and some detail of the restoration.
We are in the central area of the ancient city of Pompeii. The insula of the Lovers' Chast is elegantly structured on 2 levels, and it's situated to the north of Via dell'Abbondanza, one of the main arterial roads of the city which leads to the Forum. The insula takes its name from a fresco which has been recovered in one of the triclinium rooms, which can be found to the north of these spaces, these bakery spaces. In fact, within this big room, we find an industrial oven and some millstones. Most probably, only one of those was working during the volcano eruption. Continuing north on this side, we indeed reach the room which gives its name to the insula. In this finely frescoed room, we can see on the north wall the fresco, indeed, depicting 2 young lovers in a banquet scene, and they are about to exchange a chaste kiss. We have done, and I personally carried out many studies, 12 studies in fact, that allowed us to gather very important data concerning the urban aspect of the area from the beginning. But also, we found data which were very important in terms of archaeological enrichment, and they came from excavating the faces. In fact, during the reconfiguration of the scarps, we have found, in terms of the north face, new spaces, and therefore, thanks to the finding of these new wall sections, we were able to reconstruct what most probably can be defined as previously unknown spaces. This work comes from a project with a cross-disciplinary team, architects, engineers, archaeologists, restorers, geotechnicians and geologists, who all worked at an important challenge, which was to cover up the insula with an area of over 4,000 square meters with a new covering, which absolutely had not to be supported from within the insula, but should be supported externally, so along the east and west axis, which mark the island, and with an access from the south on Via dell'Abbondanza, one of the most important roads in Pompeii. Why covering up an archaeological site of this size? Well, for obvious conservation reasons, because it has demonstrated that covering, even temporary covering, ensures a better conservation of the archaeological findings, but in this specific case also because in the initial archaeological experience, which started in the 80s, there was a willingness to freeze the archaeological excavation at the moment of the eruption. So not just to show the beautiful frescoes they came up, but also for the observer, for the public to perceive the history of what really happened during the eruption, and therefore leaving on site pumices, lapilli, and geological sections which are witnesses to everything that was buried by the volcanic material, and therefore what happened during the excavation phases, what needed to be freed during the excavation phases. And this is not all. To this type of experience visit, which is innovative in its own way, there's also the willingness to show the site from above. So not a domestic experience, not just an access from the street, but also an access to a hanging gangway, which will allow to observe from above and to perceive the site like that. With all these activities, there's also all the archaeological operations following the most modern methodologies and with high-level archaeologists, and also the restoration and the securing of all the emergencies which come up from the excavations. And this is not less important, to reprofile the excavation phases. This site has been excavated recently and therefore has not found its final assessment. It was necessary to restabilize because there are stratigraphies which are higher as opposed to the walking surface, and therefore we had to excavate and reprofile with the geotechnical studies of high sensitivity and care so that we could avoid collapsing or dipping of the land. Surely this is a huge challenge also because we were forced to apply to carry over preliminary studies, not just during the project phase but also during the works, to find exactly which points has had the least impact and where to place the supporting pillars for the covering structure. And we did this with particular care. So we had pre-excavation actions to understand what could be found underground, and also with a series of in-depth studies. And we also paid a lot of attention to reducing the supposed actions on the cover, so to make sure that the foundations of this covering had the least possible impact and therefore were limited in terms of size. We carried over wind tunnel studies to try and understand on micro-ozonization level which were the actions of the wind on this structure, and also in terms of seismic risk. So this work really wanted to limit the impact on the theory of minimal intervention that we already know in the restoration settings and in a high sensitive settings like the Pompeii one. So we hopefully should be able to complete in time. Of course, there was a slowdown in the work because of the COVID situation. We have already done the whole scaffolding, which will help install the new roof, which will be realized using the old covering, which we are under right now. And we created a work plan to be able to very soon be able to install the new roof, which has a reticular structure and which will be something extremely new and very pleasant to look at.
As Francesca Brancaccio was explaining, the singularity, the particularity of this restoration project is the creation of a new covering that is protecting the house, the insula, but also is permitting to have a flying walkway over the archaeological site. In the video we are looking at now, we can see how the structure have been built. This is the insula. If we can come back a little bit to the beginning of the video, I want to show you exactly, the structural part, the beginning. Exactly, we can see how the different levels of the structure are overlapped to create a protection on the top. And in blue, you can see a walkway for visiting the insula from above. And from above, we will have a very different view of the area, trying to understand how the spaces are communicating and are communicating each other, and have a different perception of the insula. We are very close to the end today, but I would like just for a while to jump again back to Cuba. Joandra Bárbara Rodríguez González, especialista principal de inversiones de la Oficina del Historiador de La Habana. La Oficina del Historiador is the most important organization managing the whole heritage of Lavana. You have managed all the activities in the Ready Center and the cooperation with the Italians, led by Assorestario. Can you tell us something about your experience in the cooperation with the Italian experts?
Well, our experience with this cooperation was a constant exchange between these countries. We enriched one another. We worked for the restoration of buildings. We also worked in urban enhancement projects with Italy. Thanks to this cooperation, we carried out the renovation of materials. We are also carrying out restoration of buildings with very new techniques that we're exchanging with one another in order to enrich each other.
The center is the first international project started in the new era of the restoration, the Restauro Made in Italy project, and it will be the first example, I hope and I'm sure, to be used in other contexts to create a stable dialogue, language and cooperation in the field of restoration. The Ready Center is not only restoration because it has involved also Federlegno Arredo for the design of the center and for this furniture. Thank you very much. I hope to see you very soon in Cuba in the Ready Center and start the activities. Thank you very much, Joandra. Now we are rushing to the end of this second, let me say, episode of the Restoration Week. I know from our staff that the chat is very rich in comments and challenges also for us. We will be able to answer to every one of you, go on making questions and be part of this discussion, open discussion on the restoration field, international discussion on the restoration field. So follow us on our social, go on writing on www.restorationweek.it, Facebook again, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Let me just recall the agenda of this week. We are going tomorrow in Bari, 2:30 p.m. We will be talking about heritage and sustainability. We have introduced the topic yesterday with the occasion of the visit of Villa Galdi. Tomorrow we will talk with the experts, the American experts, Gina Crevello, the Green Building Council Italy, which is the owner of the only world protocol related to historical buildings, so including the historical value as a part of the rating system of the protocol. Let's go on. On Friday, we will be in Matera, and we will be talking about ethics. And in Bari, the second conference will be From Knowledge to Restoration on Thursday, the 2nd September. Thank you very much for having been here with us also today. See you tomorrow morning. I want just to recall that on the website you can review the video, the first episode yesterday in Naples. The chat is still active for commenting this first day or first episode. See you tomorrow in Bari, Salone del Restauro in Tour, Heritage and Sustainability. Thank you very much.